Let's cross to Brussels and correspondent Dave Keating. Dave, sources had told you last week during that EU summit that something like this could happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're still trying to find out exactly what the shipment is that was blocked. But we already had a heads up last week that this was going to happen because during a virtual summit of EU leaders, Italy's new Prime Minister, Mario Draghi, was very forceful on this subject that he believed the EU needed to use this new mechanism to block exports of AstraZeneca now to send a signal to the company that they need to meet their second quarter delivery. That is the main concern here. And of course, the way this mechanism was set up when it was unveiled last month is that it is the national governments that will block a specific shipment, and then they ask the European Commission to kind of sign off on that block. But it is at its start a national decision, so it's not surprising to see the first use of this mechanism to block a shipment coming from Italy, given Draghi's comments last week. Now, it might seem really strange that Italy is blocking exports of AstraZeneca because it's not even using hardly any of the supply that it's already been delivered of AstraZeneca. I think about a third, which is also the case in France at 23%. Now that is because what they're not worried about right now. They're worried about the second quarter. I think this is probably intended as a warning shot to AstraZeneca, saying we're not afraid to use this mechanism and we need an absolute guarantee from you right now that you will meet those second quarter deliveries, because we've had reports in the last 2 weeks that AstraZeneca won't meet its second quarter deliveries. And that second quarter is going to be really crucial. The reason that those doses that have been delivered aren't being utilized was because of that restriction to only people under 65. Now that restriction has been lifted in France, and now we've just heard also in Germany. And so that should pick up the utilization rate. The problem was that these centers, these vaccination centers, weren't ready to start inviting people under 65. So when the national medical authorities made that decision, it threw the whole system for a loop. So the idea here is to send a message to AstraZeneca. Why did they pick Australia? I think it's because they want to underline their point that this mechanism is not targeting any specific country, i.e. not targeting the UK. The UK might have been the more logical choice here, especially since the EU thinks that doses of AstraZeneca promised to the EU were given to the UK, but by doing this to Australia, they can really drive home the message that this is targeting the company and not the UK. Also, I think it will avoid a lot of negative UK media attention.
Yeah, I just want to underline something you just said there, David. The idea that, okay, we're holding AstraZeneca to account for a vaccine that right now, on March the 4th, as we speak, many Europeans don't want.
Yeah, I mean, that's the really strange part of this situation. The thing is, we don't know exactly if Europeans are refusing AstraZeneca vaccines. We know we have anecdotal reports of people saying, I'd rather have the other two vaccines. We know that some unions in France and Germany have said that they're workers, like police officers and such, that they would rather them receive the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, but there's no widespread evidence yet that people are actually refusing the AstraZeneca vaccine. And certainly the small usage of the supplied dosage, it's not actually connected to any kind of widespread rejection. So we don't know if that's going to be the case going forward. It could be that Europeans are turning down their appointments for AstraZeneca because they want to have the other doses, but there's no evidence of that yet. And basically the EU just wants to make sure that it has the doses that it needs once these logistical problems are solved, if they're solved, hopefully, and once that under 65 limit is lifted and they can kind of go back to their original schedule. They don't want to find themselves in May and June with not enough AstraZeneca doses.
All right, and another precinct heard from this Thursday, David, is this issue of the Sputnik V vaccine. So on the one hand, you got the European Medicines Agency, the top authority, saying, yes, we're starting to review it. And on the other hand, you got the Commission saying, no, we don't want to buy any.
Yeah, it's two separate processes. So, I mean, the EMA is reviewing Sputnik because Sputnik applied for approval. It's not really a proactive decision by the EMA. It's a reaction to Sputnik's approval, a request for approval. And the EMA doesn't seem to be in any hurry to make that approval. It's interesting. Last month, when Johnson & Johnson made its approval, the EMA made a big thing about it and said they were going to rush through approval and that we should get it mid-March. Indeed, it looks like the Johnson & Johnson approval is going to come next Thursday. With this Sputnik announcement, no timeline. I think people still have a lot of skepticism about that particular vaccine. And certainly today, the European Commission, a spokesperson, said that there is absolutely no talk right now about including Sputnik in its joint purchasing program. Now, that means that any individual country can go ahead and buy doses of Sputnik on its own, as Hungary has already done. Perfectly legal, because countries can do that if the vaccine isn't part of the joint procurement package. We've definitely seen, I think, leaders in Western Europe and EU authorities very uncomfortable with the Sputnik vaccine. In Eastern Europe, we're seeing countries being more receptive to it. But there is a lot of looking askance at this. And, last month, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen noted that Russia's vaccination rate is very, very low. It's 3.6%, which is lower than every single EU country. And so there are questions being asked, why is Russia so keen to export this vaccine when they're not actually vaccinating their own citizens? I think there's a lot of geopolitical concerns going on here. The Commission says, of course, that geopolitical concerns have nothing to do with this. Every vaccine is going to be treated fairly, but I think the reality is there are deep suspicions about Russia's intentions here in pushing this vaccine on Europe.